Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This is the final video of our series in thinking about second order consequences, and what better way to end it than with climate change, I would say the mother of all second order consequences. As you can see, this is the most complex network of second order consequences I have made. That is because it's a topic that I'm very interested in and I have explored it a lot. And I have to tell you already in advance, these are not good news. So you might come out of here, depressed or disillusioned, or not happy with what is in the horizon for us. So again, for those that are coming here for the first time, I have been doing a series on second order consequences. This is a topic where you pick up a new idea or a new disruption that's happening and you think about what are the consequences of that change, and then what are the consequences of those consequences. And through doing that exercise, you kind of map out a lot of things that are otherwise not immediately expected. So when people think of climate change, for example, or global warming, they might just think that things get hotter and that's it, or that the sea level rise. But that's only a very small part of what we have in store for us. So let's try, this is very complex, but I will do my best to try to make this simple. So here in bold, you can see the two main parts is that we are increasing our greenhouse gas emissions, and that's causing a rise of global average temperature through the greenhouse effect. Before I go into the global average temperature, let's just focus on the CO2 or the methane itself that is in the atmosphere. So, and some of these things you might not know, some of these things you might know, but first of all, when the CO2 reaches the ocean, it creates acidification. And that has very immediate consequences, that you get coral reefs dying off and you get phytoplankton dies off. When the phytoplankton dies off, that lowers the ocean dissolved oxygen, which in turn affects the coral reef, so you have a negative feedback loop here. Both of these are important for fisheries, for the amount of fish that the ocean can produce. So if they die, then the fish will die, and that means we cannot fish so many fish for ourselves. So all of this accelerates the sixth mass extinction we are currently living through. So not good news. Secondly, when we increase the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, that means in effect there is more CO2 in the air we breathe. And at some point, we are far away from those points, but at some point, if things become a runaway problem, if we suddenly have no control, it's no longer part of our emissions that are affecting the increase in concentration, it's something else. When it reaches a certain point, we have CO2 toxicity. So what does that do? Basically, that also accelerates the sixth mass extinction, but that decreases our neurological potential. At some point, you can just die from asphyxiation, but I don't think we will reach that point. Before that point, you actually become dumber. Your skills in logic and reasoning become slower, become less precise. So that will contribute to reduced human population indirectly. Okay, still just looking at the increase of CO2 emissions. This is something that some might know regarding farming and those things, some might not. Intuitively, we think that when we increase the carbon dioxide, that plants will grow better. Some will do, some will not. There's many different factors in going into this. What we do know is that even if they grow better, they are less nutritious. So I don't know specifically the mechanisms behind this. I just know that it is a fact that if you have more CO2, the plant might look bigger, might look more lusher. But when you analyze the leaf composition or the fruit composition, it actually has less nutrients in it. So that will contribute to reduced agricultural output that we will look a bit more soon. Okay, so that was just from us increasing the CO2 particles in the atmosphere that we breathe. Unfortunately, that is causing, through the greenhouse effect, the rise of the global average temperature. So this is the temperature of all the Earth on average that is increasing because the sun keeps shining on us every day, and the CO2 acts as a warming potential. It absorbs some of that radiation and prevents it from escaping. So this is really the thing that is causing the most harm or the most consequences, this increase in average temperature. Let's start here with this corner. If the temperature is increasing, you have snow melting and permafrost melting. Now, this is because, it is warmer, so the ice cannot survive that long. There is a lot of trapped greenhouse gases that are trapped in that snow and in that permafrost that will be released when it melts, and that feeds again into this rise of global average temperature. Then you have that the Arctic and Antarctica might become ice-free. This is called the blue ocean event. When they become ice-free, because they are usually white because of the ice, that means they are reflecting a lot of the sun's energy. If they are melting, suddenly you have darker blue ocean on it. That means there is a lower surface albedo, so the energy from the sun that used to be reflected suddenly is being absorbed by the water. That means the water itself is increasing in temperature, but that means more energy overall is staying inside our biosphere and our geosphere, and it's contributing again to this rise of global average temperature. I didn't know this also, but turns out this rise of global average temperature affects the cloud formation. So the hotter it is on average, the less clouds will be formed, and if they are formed, they will be thinner. Clouds, as you might expect, they are white, so they also reflect some of that energy. So this is again a negative feedback loop that affects the albedo, which affects again the increase in temperature. As this snow and permafrost melt, they might uncover some unexpected things. For example, there are ancient carcasses, fossils, and microbiology that are exposed, and these might cause new infections and pandemics. To give you a concrete example, I believe it was in Russia, the melting caused some anthrax to become exposed, and it wiped out a whole deer population in a certain location, which was completely unexpected. People had not even thought that could happen. What people do expect is that the snow and permafrost melting contributes to rising sea levels, and that will affect coastlines very directly. So when these coastlines get affected, that means you have lower real estate values, massive infrastructure damages, and permanent loss of infrastructure. Let's zoom out a bit here. So these infections and pandemics, they contribute to reduced human population. This economic damage leads to economic downturn, contraction, and depression, and also to mass migration. We will go into detail in this section a bit soon. We still have a lot to cover. So as these are not connected directly, but they are interlinked. So as the temperature rises, you melt things, it becomes warmer, and that affects what's called the AMOC. It slows down, and the jet stream. So these are circulatory currents that we have of air and water on the Earth. They distribute the heat through different regions of the Earth, and if there is a big disruption, for example, if the poles are no longer with ice, that means that the heat dynamics will change on the whole planet in very unexpected ways. So we will start experiencing these extreme weather events. We have already started experiencing them, but they will become more commonplace and more dire. These include hailstorms, hurricanes, and tornadoes, heat waves, and wildfires. Now, hailstorms, hurricanes, and tornadoes, of course, affect real estate and all of these infrastructure damages. Heat waves specifically, they bring about many specific heat-related issues, which are listed here. They include heat exhaustion, heat stress, heat cramps, heat rash, heat syncope, and heat stroke. All of these will either kill people directly, make them want to leave the area, and reduce productivity also indirectly. It will not be possible to work in certain regions at certain times of the day, or at some point even at all. It will not be possible to live there. Wildfires also are extremely damaging. There is long-term health damage from the smoke, and there is the freshwater pollution and shortage from fighting them, and the ash also affecting it. And of course the damage from things burning down. Okay, so that was just from the disruption in the heat distribution, but also directly affected by the global average temperature increase is that the local minimum, the local average, and local maximum temperatures might increase, and that of course leads to these issues with the heat that I've mentioned. We will have also floods and droughts in different areas, and sometimes in the same area, just in a different time of the year. These all will contribute to many different issues, such as the real estate and infrastructure damages, the freshwater pollution, and reduced agricultural output, which will be a major issue affecting us. Of course, this will also affect habitat and biodiversity loss, which in effect then affects the mass extinction that we are experiencing. We are not really understanding so much how this loss will affect us. We know that we get a lot of what's called free ecosystem services. All of this biodiversity does things for us for free, and if we lose that, then we will have to cover that cost. So that's not a good thing. It could be that there is a climate tourism opportunity happening here. So what I mean with this is that people might want to travel to specific areas before there is this climate departure, when the climate changes to something unrecognizable. So people might want, that could be like a business opportunity that people want to pay to experience that area before it changes forever. And if that area actually collapses, then they could also want to visit that as some sort of experience. This is, for example, what's happening in Chernobyl. Chernobyl had its nuclear accident, and to this day, there are people paying to go there as a part of tourism. They want to see how that area is after it's been abandoned, after it's collapsed. So that could be a small, interesting second-order consequence. Of course, we will have also warmer oceans. Warmer oceans affect the phytoplankton, which we have covered already. They also have a negative feedback loop that they prevent more gas from being absorbed in the ocean, which means if it's not absorbed in the ocean, then it goes as an emission to the atmosphere and contributes to the average temperature. The warmer ocean also enables a higher evaporation of water vapor, and water vapor is a greenhouse gas, so that just makes things worse overall. Okay, we've covered this first half, you could say, of the climate effects. Let's go here into some of the more direct things affecting us humans. So as we will see, we will have massive economic downturn. There will just be so many costs for the societies to bear that it will be too much to recover from. At the same time, we will have a reduced human population just from some direct effects. But let's focus a bit more in this economic part. So directly affecting this, we have that there will be famine and poverty. That seems simple and straightforward. When there is this economic downturn, there are inequalities powered by the poverty. That means the richer people might try to get more private security, some safe armored transportation, self-defense weapons, and secure housing. So they might live on enclaves or segregated areas, so they do not have to experience the worst. Famine and poverty, of course, affect where people want to live. So the biggest impact for humans will be this mass migration, this biblical exodus that will happen. But also, famine and poverty bring the worst in people. So there might be a rise in theocracies and religious attacks based on this uncertainty between resources. And as we progress this mass migration, they will be moving somewhere. These receiving countries, if they they let them in, they will be stressed of resources. They will not have enough resources to help all these people. There will also be conflict and war as the migration happens across the borders. If the countries do not let the people in, of course, many would die directly. But even if they let them in, there could be a rise in xenophobia because of all these people that are taking resources away from the locals. And that, as we know, leads into nationalism and eventually conflict and war and reduced human population. So, as you can see, when you look at the whole picture, it does not look good. It does not look good at all. It didn't have to be this way, but now we are more and more with each passing day getting closer to this world. And again, when you think about climate change or global warming, you think about rising sea levels, you think about, it gets warmer in general. You don't think about many of these things, some of which I haven't even mentioned here, apparently. So hold on. Let's go back here. So turns out that when factories are not polluting, they're not releasing particles in the atmosphere. These particles actually have been helping us somewhat in cooling the earth because of a process called from reflection, from aerosol. So when we stop polluting so much in that sense, there are no more particles to reflect the heat, so we have more dimming. That means we have a lower atmospheric cooling effect, and that also feeds back into the average temperature increase. Okay, but now, going back to the ending of this, again, you think that global warming is just one or two things, but it's so many things. And it's really hard to grasp this. When you look at these are all words, really. You don't, when you see famine written here, we have never really experienced that. Or when you see mass migration here, this is something very different from what we are used to. Sure, we might have seen some small things here, hurricanes, wildfires, but all of this combined, it's a monster of a problem, and it will not be easy the years ahead. But hopefully now you have a better overview of the huge issue that is climate change and global warming. I hope you have become a bit more enlightened that this has been useful to think about. Throughout this series, we have covered many different topics. I hope you can use this new way of analyzing things better, that you can use them in a productive way to think about, I don't know, your own business, your own life, your own decisions. When you're trying to make a decision, you can think about what are the consequences of that decision and the consequences of that consequence. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy in bearing with me as I try to explain all of these concepts. Feel free to share these videos or to link or to look at the images directly. I will be linking them in all the videos. Thank you for this small journey, and I will see you in the next video.